My husband is really good looking, but he's also broke. For 3 years of marriage, everything at home has been paid for by my salary. But then, I found out he can drop millions just to buy a necklace for his first love. Turns out, he's not some poor guy. He's an heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune. By accident, I heard him talking about me. Emily? She's just a toy for me. How could I ever really love her? Hearing his cold words, I left a divorce agreement on the table and walked away. But he regretted it. The tea on the table had gone completely cold, but I didn't drink a sip. Watching a video news alert on my phone, I clenched my fists. There he was, my husband, living off my salary every day, wearing an expensive suit and spending thousands at an auction. Yet this morning, he asked me to go to the market and buy discounted produce. My eyes felt painfully dry. I had been deceived. After 3 years of marriage, I hadn't even known Mark's true identity. 1 million. Do you know how much that is? Enough to buy groceries, tissues, clothes for a lifetime. I could finally buy that $300 bag I've wanted but never dared to purchase. My hands shook as I flipped through our marriage certificate, staring at the handsome man in the photo. It all seemed unreal. He said he grew up in an orphanage with nothing, even owing $1 million in debt. But because of some surreal love, I believed him, even taking on 2 jobs to help pay off his debts. But now, the truth shows he's not some poor guy. He's an heir to a huge fortune. I was awake all night. The next day, when I groggily opened the curtains, I saw Mark downstairs, dressed in ordinary clothes. He was standing by a luxury car, talking quietly with a doctor. Mark seemed a bit impatient, frowning. I know, get going. It's not good if she finds out. I instinctively hid and slipped back to my room before he noticed. Not long after, Mark came in. Seeing me, his eyes lit up with a loving smile. You're up. I got you your favorite breakfast. Come eat. Looking at him like this made my heart ache. I have something to do today. I need to get to the office, so you can eat alone. Hearing me, the light in his eyes dimmed a bit, but he quickly smiled back at me. Okay, you go ahead. Need me to take you? I shook my head, feeling a bit dizzy. No, I'll go myself. Maybe my tone was a bit cold. A hint of doubt flashed in Mark's eyes, but he quickly went back to normal. Leaving the house under Mark's watchful eye, I didn't go to the office like I said. I hung around nearby, waiting for Mark to leave. I've asked Mark before why he didn't get a job. He said it's because of his low education and social anxiety, making it hard to find work. But now I know, as my husband at night and a wealthy heir by day, when would he have time to work? Just as I thought, Mark soon came out. A luxury car picked him up right from our doorstep. I got a cab and followed him. The car stopped by a luxury club I've never seen. I got out and quietly followed. Mark went into a private room where a bunch of young guys in fancy clothes warmly greeted him. Mark, you're finally here. Why are you still wearing those ragged clothes? Still into role-playing, huh? You haven't really fallen for Emily, have you? Mark's voice reached my ears. As if. She's just a toy to me. How could I ever love her? A naive girl like her. I got her wrapped around my finger with a few sweet words. She even helped me pay off $1 million in debt. Can't compare to Rachel at all. Everyone laughed loudly, and at that moment, I felt stripped bare, painfully exposed among them. These 3 years, to Mark, I was nothing but a foolish plaything. My whole body shook uncontrollably, my heartbeat seemed to vanish, and my ears filled with Mark's cold words. But what they said next, I couldn't bear. Mark, that necklace you got at the auction wasn't cheap. Didn't Rachel thank you? What do you know? It's Mark's kind of romance. He talks about true love with no expectations. What's $1 million necklace for our Mark? Right, when Mark married Emily, it was just to make Rachel jealous. In that moment, my world turned blank. I thought I had a happy marriage, but it was a spur-of-the-moment decision for Mark. And all along, I played the fool. But it didn't end there. Their conversation continued. Mark, what if Emily finds out who you really are? My heart sank. I moved closer to the open gap. Even with a sliver of hope, I wished Mark would say he cared about me. But his words crushed that hope. She's too busy working to notice these things. And even if she finds out, it'll just be some drama. A bit of money will solve it. I shut my eyes in despair. His first love could make him drop millions. But after deceiving me for 3 years, he figured he'd just buy me off. Dizzy and unsteady, I was about to leave when a stunning woman sauntered into the room. The room exploded with excitement. As I guessed, this woman was likely Rachel. Peering through the gap, I saw Rachel and Mark sitting together, eyes never leaving each other. I've seen Mark act all lovey-dovey. He'd tell me he loved me almost every day. But today, after catching the way he looked at Rachel, I realized how fake his love for me really was. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and left this place that broke my heart. Walking down the city streets, I felt the cold wind against my cheeks. Never thought something so cliché would happen to me. But the truth is, I was too naive. I trusted Mark's words, believed in his love, and got fooled for 3 years without realizing a thing. Thinking back to the poor but sweet years we shared, I suddenly felt the irony of it all. I scrimped and saved for him. We were married for 3 years and I didn't get myself a new outfit. I even skipped dinners to buy him his favorite sneakers. In the end, the harsh truth revealed that Mark was an heir to a wealthy family. Everything I did for him was just some twisted game for his amusement. I don't remember how I got home, but when I did, Mark was already in the kitchen cooking. Seeing me, he flashed a gentle smile. "You're back. I sold some old clothes today. It was supposed to be 98, but the shop owner gave me 100 instead because I'm a regular. I thought you love fish, and it's been a while since we had any, so I bought a big one to cook for you tonight." I looked at him. He was still so handsome and gentle, wearing the apron I sewed for him. Everything seemed so harmonious, but I knew we had already reached a point of no return. He once said he learned to cook for me, but now, I doubt everything he ever told me. Mark made fish soup with half of it and sauerkraut fish with the other half. After serving the dishes, he looked at me with an expectant gaze, waiting for my praise. Everything before me seemed both real and fake. It was like a performance, a scene he recreated so genuinely that I couldn't help but fall deep into it. But reality isn't a fairy tale. Dreams eventually shatter. I realized our marriage couldn't go on, but I still wanted to ask one last time if he ever loved me. "Mark, did you ever love me?" Hearing me out, a hint of confusion flickered across Mark's face, but he quickly returned to his usual expression. "What are you talking about? How could I not love you?" Look at him. He acts so convincingly, enough for me to believe it for 3 years, enough for me to give him everything. But I now understood. I was just a pastime for him, maybe even a stepping stone to win back his first love. "Mark, haven't you tired of pretending for 3 years?" Hearing that, Mark looked visibly shocked and then went pale. He came over as if to hug me, but I dodged him. "Don't touch me." I looked at him as large tears streamed down my face. "Mark, I know everything. You're not some poor guy. You're an heir, and you never loved me. I was just a plaything to you." I took out my phone and showed him the photos from the other night. He wanted to explain, but one look at the photos left him silent. "You followed me?" His smile froze, and I suddenly saw how cold it looked without the usual warmth. "Yes, I followed you. I found out the truth and heard all of your conversations." Hearing this, Mark gave a cold laugh. "So, what now? You want money, or you're going to cling on as my wife?" I looked at him, astonished. After being together for 3 years, he thinks this of me? "I don't want your money, nor do I care about being your wife. Mark, I want a divorce." "Are you sure you want a divorce so easily? I'm an heir. You know how many women want to marry me? It's a blessing to marry me. Why don't you cherish it?" "A blessing?" I was trembling with anger. "Your so-called blessing is being your plaything for 3 years, going through hardships, only to realize it was all a game? If that's a blessing, I'd rather not have it." Hearing this, a scornful look crossed his face. "You might not want it, but others do. If you're trying to gain sympathy from this, let me tell you, that's not happening." Tears streamed down my face, carrying a bitterness that tasted just like my heart felt. I wanted to say more, but Mark's phone rang suddenly. Glancing at the caller ID, he picked up without hesitation. "All right, where are you? I'll be right there, don't worry." From his tone, I instantly guessed it was Rachel on the other end. "Don't leave yet. Sign the divorce papers first." I shouted after him, but he walked out without a backward glance, leaving a cold "I don't have time" in his wake. After he left, I collapsed onto the couch, feeling utterly drained. I barely remember how I got through that day, just that the fish Mark cooked grew cold on the table, emitting a nauseating stench. The next day, before I could even find Mark, he returned home wearing a formal suit. Seeing my sleep-deprived, haggard face, he showed a trace of disdain. "Made up your mind yet? Still want a divorce?" Maybe after being exposed, he didn't want to hide anymore. He stood over me, looking down with a kind of superiority. In his eyes, marrying him might have been the luckiest thing that could have happened to me. But my response left him wide-eyed. "Yes, divorce." Mark frowned. The face that usually smiled gently at me was now full of dissatisfaction. "Emily, can't you stop acting out like this?" I sighed, my voice hoarse. "You don't need to worry. I won't ask for a cent after the divorce. Let's go to the registry now. I don't want to wait any longer." Hearing this, Mark seemed a bit agitated, gritting his teeth as he spoke. "Emily, don't think these little tricks will make me remember you fondly. I'm Mark's heir, and since I was young, I've always gotten what I wanted. And you're just a toy. Do you really think you can become something great like that?" My heart sank. Mark didn't know. I didn't care about all that money. I just wanted a husband who loves me. That's it. "You can stop talking now. If you won't agree to a divorce, fine. I'll take it to court until you sign those papers." Mark looked at me with those eyes that used to be so full of love. Now they were just full of anger. I told you before, I gave you a chance, and you didn't appreciate it. Don't come crying to me later. The way he acted, like he was doing me a favor by lying to me for 3 years, made me sick. I felt regret for the 3 years I lost. Mark, I'm serious about divorcing you. It's no joke, and it's not for your so-called fortune. If you don't agree today, I'll ask tomorrow. And if you don't agree tomorrow, I'll keep asking until you do. Mark's face darkened when I said that. I've never met a woman as ungrateful as you. You're impossible. I couldn't stand it anymore and pointed to the door, telling him to leave. Mark, the rich guy, wasn't used to being kicked out. Hearing me say that, he stormed out angrily. After he left, I washed my face and told myself to get it together. I couldn't let someone who didn't love me affect my mood. But then, unexpectedly, Rachel showed up. So you're Emily? You're nothing special, just poor. She glanced around my place, covering her nose with her perfectly manicured hand. To people like her, having money was a clear line. My lack of it just made her feel superior. $1 million, is that enough? She said it with disdain, as if talking to me was beneath her. What do you mean? I frowned, realizing in their world, my 3 years could just be settled with $1 million. Typical. For people like you, $1 million is enough for a lifetime, isn't it? What more do you want? Rachel's tone was full of arrogance. It was hard to believe such mean words came from such a pretty mouth. I don't want your money. If you think you can put a price on my 3 lost years, think again. Hearing that, Rachel laughed like she'd heard the funniest joke ever. You're too much. Did you really think you're the tragic heroine waiting for Mark to regret and come back to you? I was so angry my hands shook, and I pointed at Rachel. Leave now, or I'll call the cops. Rachel scoffed, crossing her arms and looking at me like I was a fool. I'm telling you, divorce Mark soon. He's mine. You're just a replacement, a toy. Don't dream of something impossible. And don't try anything funny, or I'll keep an eye on you. I couldn't take it anymore and went to close the door, but Rachel reached out first. Just as she was about to slap me, I instinctively pushed her. It wasn't even hard, but she fell. As she hit the ground, Mark's angry voice erupted. Emily, what are you doing? And then, a force pushed me, making me lose my balance and fall. How dare you touch Rachel? Have you lost your mind? Mark rushed to protect Rachel, leaving me sprawled on the ground, looking like a clown no one cared about. Watching the man who once stood by me side with another woman hurt, even though I knew better than to hope for anything from him. 3 years of marriage, seeing each other every day. I thought it'd mean something more to him, but without hesitation, he chose Rachel. Rachel, hiding behind Mark, forced out a tear, speaking in a sugary voice. Mark, I just wanted to see what your wife of 3 years was like. I didn't expect Emily to demand $1 billion from me, and when I refused, she pushed me. Hearing her, Mark's face went dark, and he looked even colder at me. Emily, I wanted to leave you some dignity because of our 3 years together, but you're such a disgrace. This is all on you. On me? I looked at him in disbelief. The face was familiar, but he seemed like a stranger. You fooled me for 3 years. I've lost everything. What more do you want from me? Ha! I get it. Mark's eyes were icy. I agree to the divorce. Are you happy now? Then he pulled out his phone. You make about $30K a year, so over 3 years, that's $90K. I'll round it up to $100K for you. As soon as he said it, my phone dinged with the transfer. I looked up at Mark, his eyes cold like he was staring at a stray dog. We're even now. In his eyes, our 3 years together was only worth $100K. I couldn't hold back. I sent the money back and slapped him hard. Now we're even. I turned away, not wanting to see those two ever again. After divorcing Mark, I focused on work. Life became simple but fulfilling. Those two, always in the headlines, disappeared from my life completely. It was like they were never there. Until 3 months later, when a news story about Rachel came up. As a top actress, Rachel's personal life was messy. She often got involved with young actors. Sources say she had a huge fight with her rich boyfriend about this, and they broke up. I didn't expect that when I heard about those two again, I'd feel surprisingly calm inside. Maybe it's because I've let it all go. When my coworkers gossip excitedly, I just smile and go back to my desk to work. But what caught me off guard was, when I got home on the bus, I found Mark waiting at my door. He looked a lot thinner, with stubble on his chin that seemed like it hadn't been shaved in a while, and dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. He took a few steps forward but then stopped. Emily. His voice was hoarse, with a hint of suppressed, hard-to-detect sadness. Seeing him again, I realized I had no expectations for this person in front of me anymore. I ignored him, turned around to leave, but he grabbed my hand. Emily, are you still mad at me? I tried to pull my hand back, but he held on tighter than I expected. These days without you have been unbearable. I often wake up in the middle of the night and find you're not there by my side. Emily, I hate to admit it, but I can't live without you. I looked at Mark with a hint of sarcasm in my eyes. Mark, why are you telling me this? We're divorced. We have no ties now. When I said that, he looked hurt. could you not be so harsh? I really realize my mistakes and just want to make things right with you. Give me a chance, okay? How convenient, just this morning I saw the news about his breakup with Rachel, and now he's here to reconcile. Mark, do you think I'm an idiot? You've been lying to me for 3 years. How much longer did you plan on deceiving me? In his eyes, I'm just someone he can easily take for granted without paying a price. Even after hurting me, he's confident I'd fall back into his arms with a simple gesture. I know why you're here. I'm not interested in you or Rachel's issues, and I definitely don't want you back in my life. The light in Mark's eyes dimmed a bit, but he didn't let go of my hand. He gritted his teeth, looking like he was about to risk it all. I'm Mark's heir. If you're with me, you could live in my big villa, enjoy endless wealth. Are you sure you don't want to remarry me? As he spoke, my gaze turned cold. Even now, he still thinks he can buy me with money. I'm not interested in your money. Take your arrogant attitude somewhere else, out of my sight. Maybe it was the firmness in my voice. Mark finally let go of my hand and stood there in silence. As it got darker, he stood in the shadows, and I couldn't see his expression, but I heard his low voice. Are you sure? I know your lifelong dream was to have your own house. Marry me, and I can make that happen. I just chuckled. Sure, I want a house, but only if I earn it myself. Anything related to you, I couldn't care less. I said my piece and turned away. Even staying at work, I didn't want to see him again. After that day, I thought Mark wouldn't show up again, but surprisingly, he seemed determined to win me back. He started showing up outside my office every day, making me lunch boxes, even bringing flowers to my desk. Despite his efforts, I dumped all the lunches and tossed the flowers downstairs. Even after all that, Mark didn't get angry. Instead, he turned around and gave me more expensive gifts. When he handed me that pricey necklace, I remembered last year on my birthday when we went shopping, and I picked out a $200 bag. But he told me it was too expensive, saying $200 could buy us a year's worth of tissues. Yet he turned around and gifted a $10 million necklace to his first love. Mark, stop sending me gifts. I won't get back together with you. I snapped the necklace in half in front of him, watching the sparkling crystals fall from my fingertips to the floor. Mark looked at me, the light in his eyes dimming. After I found out our 3-year marriage was a sham, there's no going back. Then I turned and walked away, and Mark didn't try to stop me. Some coworkers said he stood outside the office all night. To avoid his harassment, I resigned and moved back to my hometown, City B. Honestly, City B's opportunities don't compare to City A's, but I left without a hint of nostalgia. Maybe there was nothing in that city worth missing anymore. Back at home, my parents seemed almost prepared for my return, cooking up a storm without mentioning the divorce. With their care, I gained 5 pounds in just a month. Surprisingly, finding a job was much easier than I thought. A week after moving back to City B, I landed a job. Even more pleasantly, my boss turned out to be my high school senior, Sam. Sam was super nice and understanding, giving me lots of opportunities to show my skills on a broader stage. 3 months passed, and Sam and I grew closer. We'd grab food together or take walks in the park during our downtime. I thought my life would continue peacefully like this, but Mark showed up again, disrupting my calm once more. One day while walking with Sam, I felt a familiar grip on my arm and heard a voice I recognized. Emily, is this why you rejected me? I turned around to see Mark. It had only been 3 months, yet he seemed like a different person, his eyes full of harshness. He looked at Sam with a disdainful gaze, his tone sharp and sarcastic. Emily, after divorcing me, how did your taste get so bad? Even someone like him catches your eye? I yanked his hand away and stood by Sam, glaring at him. I won't let you talk about Sam like that. He's a good person, and you can't hold a candle to him. Hearing this, Mark's face visibly darkened. How long has it been, and you're already so close with him? Emily, why didn't I realize before that you're such a loose woman? I trembled with anger. All those years of insult and the 3 years of being treated like a joke came flooding back. Mark, you say I'm loose, but what about you? You're selfish, hypocritical, and cold-hearted. What gives you the right to say anything about me? Whether from anger or sorrow, Mark's eyes turned red. He looked at me, still angry, but there was a hint of sadness I could barely detect. I'll ask you one last time, are you willing to remarry me? I looked at him as if he was the biggest joke in the world. Mark, I think I've answered you many times. I won't remarry you, so please stop bothering me. After saying that, I pulled Sam to leave, but Mark called after me. Do you really think this guy will love you and marry you? You're wrong. After being played by me for 3 years, how could he possibly want you? As the words left his mouth, Sam turned sharply and punched him in the face. I won't let you insult Emily like that. Mark took the punch, turned his head, and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Emily, one day you'll realize that no one in this world will truly love you except me. I'll wait for that day, and for you to come back to me begging to remarry. Seeing this, Sam landed another punch. A scumbag like you has no right to talk about love with Emily. You don't understand love at all. To be honest, if you hadn't cut in, you never would have been the one to marry Emily. Hearing this, I looked over, surprised. Sam's expression was serious, not joking at all. Mark, who had been holding back, finally exploded, and the two started fighting. I rushed to protect Sam, and seeing this, Mark's raised fist suddenly stopped midair. His eyes were unclear in the darkness, but I could tell he was really hurt. If it were before, you would have protected me, right? Mark suddenly said something out of the blue. I didn't answer him. I just took Sam's hand, turned, and left. I thought my actions that day had made everything clear to Mark, but I underestimated him and his power. Because of Mark's interference, Sam's company faced huge financial trouble, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. And in this crisis, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, needing $500,000 for surgery. One hardship after another hit me, and I crouched in the hospital corridor, crying my heart out. The sound of footsteps came, and I looked up. A pair of shoes, expensive leather ones, stopped in front of me. Emily, I know you need $500,000. I can give it to you. I looked up. It was Mark, smiling like he had won, looking at me like I was prey. But on one condition, you have to remarry me. I never thought Mark would stoop so low to get me back. But I had no other way. My mom was in the operating room, needing that money to save her. Just as I was about to agree, an anxious voice called out, Emily, don't agree to it. Don't worry about your mom's surgery, but you can't agree to this monster. It was Sam. Mark's face changed instantly. You again? Sam took my hand, and the warmth from his palm gave me comfort. Emily, don't be afraid. I'm here. Let's take care of the surgery fees together. With that, he pulled me away, ignoring Mark's yelling, and we went ahead to pay for the surgery. Watching Sam, my heart felt heavy. Sam, you know Mark's behind what's happening to your company. You've already helped me so much. I don't want to cause you more trouble. I plan to resign, and I'll find a way to repay you that $500,000 as soon as I can. Hearing this, Sam's gentle face turned serious. What nonsense are you talking about, Emily? Seeing you again, I decided that you'll be my forever. No matter the crisis, we'll get through it together, okay? Looking at his determined face, I couldn't help but nod. After that, Sam and I worked even harder, and with our efforts, the company started to recover. Mark hadn't been around for a while. I heard he was dealing with family issues and was now overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Sam and I landed a big contract, which led to even more trust and opportunities. The company quickly went public, and Sam and I naturally got married. Our marriage was very happy. Sam treated me well, and his parents didn't judge me for being divorced. They treated me like their own daughter. With our hard work, the company kept growing. We soon opened branches, expanding into the southwestern market. It wasn't until a year later that I heard news about Mark again. Turns out, he wasn't the real son of his wealthy family, but the son of the mistress and a servant. When this news came out, Mark was kicked out of his house. Having been spoiled all his life, he had no means of supporting himself. When he called friends for help, he found they'd already cut him off. After spending all his money, the once glorious Mark had no choice but to deliver food for a living. When I heard this, I was celebrating the arrival of our daughter with Sam. Rubbing my slightly swollen belly, I told Sam, meeting you has been the luckiest thing in my life.